The biting Alaskan wind whipped around a small, isolated cabin, rattling the poorly fitted windows inside. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the weathered face of a man sharpening a hunting knife with methodical precision. This was John Bishop. Though few knew him by that name anymore, he was a ghost, a recluse, a shadow of the man he once was, once a highly decorated special forces operative. Now he was just a man trying to outrun his past. And the ghosts it held. The cabin itself was sparsely furnished. A rough-hewn table, a couple of chairs, a bunk bed covered in thick furs. Practicality reigned supreme. Comfort was a forgotten luxury. Bishop needed little. He hunted for his food, chopped his own wood, and kept the outside world at bay with a vigilance born of hard-earned experience. His days were filled with the monotonous rhythm of survival, a carefully constructed shield against the memories that threatened to consume him. Those memories centered on a singular event, the death of his wife, Sarah. Ostensibly, she died in a car accident. But Bishop knew better. Sarah had been a journalist, digging into the shady practices of a burgeoning tech corporation. Omnicorp. She'd been close to uncovering something big, something that threatened to expose their unethical data collection and manipulation tactics. Then, suddenly, she was gone. The official investigation had been a whitewash. The police, seemingly uninterested in the glaring inconsistencies, had quickly ruled it an accident. Bishop, however, had refused to accept it. He'd used his considerable skills to conduct his own investigation, piecing together a trail of circumstantial evidence that pointed directly to Omnicorp. He'd found deleted emails, tampered with vehicle data, and whispers of corporate intimidation. But without concrete proof, he was powerless. The grief and the frustration had driven him to the edge. He'd contemplated revenge, fantasized about tearing Omnicorp down brick by digital brick. But he knew a frontal assault would be suicide. They were too powerful, too well-connected, so he'd done the only thing he could. He'd disappeared. He'd shed his old identity, cut ties with everyone he knew, and sought refuge in the Alaskan wilderness, hoping to find solace in isolation. He'd spent the last 5 years honing his skills, preparing himself for the day when he might finally have the opportunity to bring Omnicorp to justice. He'd practiced his hand-to-hand combat, sharpened his marksmanship, and studied the intricacies of cybersecurity, determined to be ready for whatever they threw at him. He knew they hadn't forgotten about him. He was a loose end, a potential threat, and Omnicorp didn't tolerate threats. The rhythmic scrape of the knife against the whetstone was interrupted by the insistent beeping of a satellite phone. He hesitated, his hand tightening around the knife handle. He rarely used the phone, only turning it on for a few hours each week to check for emergency messages. This call, however, felt different. It felt like the storm he'd been bracing for was finally about to break. With a sigh, he rose and picked up the phone, his eyes hardening with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The quiet life was over. John Bishop, the ghost, was about to be resurrected. The sleek, chrome and glass tower of Omnicorp headquarters dominated the Chicago skyline, a monument to technological innovation and corporate power. Inside, on the top floor, bathed in the cool, sterile light of the executive suite, sat Adrian Vance, the CEO and architect of the empire. Vance was a man who exuded an unsettling charisma. His tailored suit, perfectly coiffed hair, and piercing blue eyes conveyed an image of effortless control. But beneath the polished veneer lay a ruthless ambition and a chilling disregard for human life. Vance surveyed the city below, a network of interconnected data points in his mind. Omnicorp wasn't just a tech company. It was a data harvesting machine. They collected information from every conceivable source: social media, online purchases, location tracking, even smart appliances. They analyzed this data to predict trends, manipulate consumer behavior, and, most importantly, control the narrative. One of Vance's key tools was a sophisticated AI program known as Oracle. Oracle could sift through billions of data points in seconds, identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities. It could predict individual behavior with unnerving accuracy, allowing Omnicorp to preemptively neutralize anyone who posed a risk to their interests. This often involved character assassination, spreading disinformation, or, in extreme cases, outright elimination. Vance believed that information was power, and he wielded that power with absolute impunity. He justified his actions by claiming that he was creating a better world, a world where technology solved all problems and everyone lived in harmony. But the reality was far more sinister. Omnicorp was building a surveillance state, where privacy was a myth and dissent was swiftly silenced. His methods were subtle, insidious. They didn't use brute force, they used manipulation. They controlled the flow of information, shaping public opinion and influencing political decisions. They funded think tanks, sponsored research, and cultivated relationships with influential journalists to ensure their message was always heard. Point 1 scene plays out. A whistleblower attempts to expose Omnicorp's unethical practices. He leaks confidential documents to a reputable news organization. But before the story can break, Omnicorp's PR machine swings into action. They release a series of fabricated stories discrediting the whistleblower, portraying him as a disgruntled employee with a history of mental instability. They hack his email account, revealing embarrassing personal details that further undermine his credibility. The news organization, fearing legal repercussions and public backlash, quietly shelves the story. The whistleblower is left ruined, his reputation shattered, his life in tatters. Vance observed this operation from his office, a slight smile playing on his lips. Efficiency. He murmured to his chief of security, a hulking man named Kruger. Eliminate the threat before it even materializes. Kruger, a former mercenary with a penchant for violence, nodded in agreement. He was Vance's enforcer, the man who handled the more delicate aspects of Omnicorp's operations. Vance turned back to the window, his gaze sweeping across the city. He saw not buildings and streets, but a vast, interconnected network of data, all flowing into his control. He was the master of this digital domain, the architect of a new world order. And he wouldn't let anyone, not even a ghost from the past, threaten his vision. The phone call that Bishop received was already being analyzed, his every move anticipated. Vance was ready. The voice on the satellite phone was strained, laced with fear. John? It's about Maya. Maya was Bishop's niece, Sarah's sister's daughter. After Sarah's death, Bishop had tried to keep his distance, fearing he would only bring danger to her door. But he'd secretly kept tabs on her, ensuring she was safe and well. She was a bright, compassionate young woman, a doctor working at a free clinic in Chicago, dedicating her life to helping the underserved. What about Maya? Bishop's voice was tight, his grip on the phone tightening. She's been framed that they're saying she was stealing medication, selling it on the black market. The police have arrested her. Bishop felt a cold fury rising within him. He knew, instinctively, that this was Omnicorp's doing. They were using Maya as leverage, a way to flush him out of hiding. They knew he wouldn't stand by and let her be destroyed. Who framed her? He demanded. I don't know for sure, but there's evidence that's been planted. It's too perfect, too convenient. And I heard whispers about Omnicorp. Bishop hung up the phone, his mind racing. He had to get to Chicago, had to clear Maya's name. But he knew he was walking into a trap. Vance would be expecting him. He would have to be careful, methodical. He couldn't afford to make any mistakes. He spent the next few hours packing his gear. Preparing for the journey, he gathered his weapons, his communication equipment, and a few essential supplies. He also took out a small, worn photograph of Sarah, his wife. He looked at her face, her smiling eyes, and made a silent vow he would avenge her death, and he would protect Maya, no matter the cost. The journey to Chicago was arduous, a series of connecting flights and anonymous rental cars. He moved like a shadow, avoiding surveillance cameras and minimizing his interactions with others. He knew Omnicorp would be watching, tracking his every move. As he approached Chicago, he felt a sense of foreboding. The city was a concrete jungle, a labyrinth of surveillance and control. He was entering the Lion's Den. He checked into a nondescript motel on the outskirts of the city, a place where he could lay low and gather information. He needed to understand the situation on the ground, to assess the evidence against Maya, and to identify who was responsible for framing her. He contacted a former colleague, a tech expert named Ben, whom he trusted implicitly. Ben had helped him with his initial investigation into Sarah's death, and he was the only person Bishop knew who could navigate the complex world of cybersecurity. Ben, "I need your help," Bishop said, his voice low and urgent. "My niece has been framed for a crime she didn't commit. I believe Omnicorp is behind it." "Omnicorp? They're powerful, John. You're playing with fire." "I know. But I have no choice. I need you to help me find the evidence to clear her name." "Can you do it?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "All right, John. I'm in. But be careful. Vance doesn't play by the rules." With Ben's help, Bishop began to unravel the web of deceit that Omnicorp had woven around Maya. He discovered that her computer had been hacked, her email account compromised, and false evidence planted in her locker at the clinic. It was a sophisticated operation, designed to ensure her conviction. But Bishop was determined to fight back. He wouldn't let Omnicorp destroy Maya's life, just as they had destroyed Sarah's. The game had begun. Bishop started his investigation by focusing on the clinic. Where Maya worked, he needed to understand the environment, the people, and the security measures in place. He spent hours observing the building from a distance. Noting the entrances, exits, and surveillance cameras, he needed a weakness, a point of entry. Under the cover of darkness, Bishop approached the clinic. He disabled the security cameras with a small, handheld EMP device, creating a blind spot. He then used his lock-picking skills to bypass the front door, slipping inside like a ghost. The clinic was eerily silent, the only sound the faint hum of the ventilation system. Bishop moved with practiced ease, his senses heightened, his every step deliberate. He knew he was on a tightrope. One wrong move could alert security and jeopardize his mission. He headed straight for Maya's office. A small, cluttered room filled with medical books and patient files. He needed to find any evidence that could support her innocence, any clues that could lead him to the people who framed her. He meticulously searched the office, checking every drawer, every cabinet, every file. He found nothing. It was as if the room had been scrubbed clean, all traces of Maya's presence erased. Frustrated, Bishop decided to check the security footage. He knew Omnicorp had likely tampered with it, but he had to try it. He located the server room, a small, windowless space tucked away in the back of the clinic. He disabled the alarm system and accessed the server. As he suspected, the footage had been manipulated. There were gaps in the recording, and key moments had been deleted. But Bishop was a resourceful man. He used a data recovery program to retrieve the deleted files, hoping to find something useful. As he was reviewing the footage, he noticed something odd, a shadowy figure lurking in the background, a man wearing a security guard uniform. The man's face was obscured, but Bishop recognized the distinctive tattoo on his wrist, a coiled serpent. Bishop knew that tattoo. He had seen it before. On the arm of a known associate of Kruger, Vance's chief of security. It was a direct link to Omnicorp. He needed to find the security guard, to get him to talk. But he knew it wouldn't be easy. The man would be protected, hidden away by Omnicorp. Bishop left the clinic, his mind churning. He had a lead, but he needed more information. He contacted Ben, asking him to run a search on the security guard, to find his identity and his location. While waiting for Ben's response, Bishop decided to pay a visit to one of Maya's colleagues at the clinic, a doctor named Ramirez. He hoped Ramirez could provide him with some insights into Maya's character, her relationships, and any potential enemies she might have had. He found Ramirez at a local bar, drowning his sorrows in a glass of whiskey. Ramirez was hesitant to talk at first, fearing retribution from Omnicorp, but Bishop was persuasive. He appealed to Ramirez's sense of justice, reminding him that Maya was a good person who didn't deserve what was happening to her. Ramirez finally relented, telling Bishop that Maya had been investigating a series of suspicious deaths at the clinic. Patients who had received experimental treatments were dying at an alarming rate. Maya suspected that the clinic was involved in some kind of unethical research, and she was determined to expose it. That was it. That was the connection. Maya had stumbled onto something that Omnicorp wanted to keep hidden, and they had silenced her by framing her for a crime she didn't commit. Bishop thanked Ramirez and left the bar. His resolve hardened. He knew he was getting closer to the truth, but he also knew he was walking into a dangerous game. He was up against a powerful enemy, an enemy who wouldn't hesitate to use any means necessary to protect their secrets. But Bishop was ready. He was a force to be reckoned with. Ben came through. He identified the security guard as Marcus Bell, a former convict with a history of violence. He was known to work as a freelance, enforcer for various criminal organizations in Chicago. Ben also provided Bishop with Bell's address, a rundown apartment in a seedy part of town. Bishop knew he had to act fast. Bell was a loose end, and Omnicorp would likely move him soon. If they hadn't already, he drove to Bell's apartment. His senses on high alert, he parked a block away, observing the building. It was a dilapidated brick structure, its windows boarded up, its walls covered in graffiti. A haven for criminals and junkies. He approached the building on foot, his hand resting on the Glock tucked into the waistband of his jeans. He entered the building through a broken front door. The stench of urine and decay assaulting his nostrils, he found Bell's apartment on the 3rd floor. The door was reinforced steel with multiple locks. Bishop didn't bother with lock picks. He simply kicked the door in, sending it crashing to the floor. Bell was inside, sitting at a table, cleaning a handgun. He looked up in surprise, his eyes widening as he recognized Bishop. "Who the hell are you?" Bell snarled, reaching for his gun. Bishop moved with lightning speed. He disarmed Bell with a swift kick to the wrist, sending the gun flying across the room. He then grabbed Bell by the throat, slamming him against the wall. "You framed my niece, Maya." Bishop growled, his voice a low, menacing rumble. "You're going to tell me who paid you to do it?" Bell struggled against Bishop's grip, his face turning red. "I don't know what you're talking about," he gasped. Bishop tightened his grip, cutting off Bell's air supply. "Don't lie to me," he hissed. "I know you were working for Omnicorp. Tell me who gave you the orders." Bell's eyes bulged, his body convulsing. He knew he was outmatched, that he was facing a man who was willing to kill him. All right, he choked out. "It was Kruger. Vance's chief of security. That he gave me the orders, provided the evidence, paid me the money." "What evidence did you plant?" Bishop demanded. Bell explained how he had hacked into Maya's computer, planted false emails and documents, and tampered with the clinic's security system. He described the entire operation in detail, implicating Kruger and, by extension, Vance. Bishop released his grip on Bell's throat, allowing him to breathe. "Where can I find Kruger?" he asked. Bell hesitated, fearing retribution from Omnicorp. But he knew he had no choice. He gave Bishop Kruger's address, a heavily guarded penthouse apartment in downtown Chicago. Bishop knew he was walking into a trap. Kruger was a dangerous man, a skilled fighter, and he would be expecting him. But Bishop was determined to confront him, to make him pay for what he had done. Before leaving, Bishop delivered a final message. He grabbed Bell's hand and slammed it down on the table, breaking his fingers one by one. Bell screamed in agony. "Tell Vance," Bishop said, his voice cold and emotionless, "that I'm coming for him. Tell him that he can't hide behind his technology, that he can't silence the truth. Tell him that justice is coming." He left Bell writhing on the floor, his hand mangled, his life shattered. He had sent a message, a clear and brutal warning. Omnicorp knew that he was serious, that he wouldn't stop until he had brought them down. The game had escalated. The retaliation from Omnicorp was swift and brutal. Bishop returned to his motel to find it under siege. A black SUV, unmarked, was parked outside, and 2 men in tactical gear were attempting to breach the door. Bishop reacted instantly. He drew his Glock and fired 2 shots, hitting both men in the legs. They went down, screaming in pain. He didn't waste time interrogating them. He knew they were just hired guns, pawns in Vance's game. He needed to protect Ben, his only real ally in this fight. He tried calling Ben, but there was no answer. Panic surged through him. He raced to Ben's apartment, his mind filled with dread. He arrived to find the door ajar, the apartment ransacked. Ben was gone. A note was pinned to the wall with a knife. "Stop digging, or he dies." Bishop's blood ran cold. He had underestimated Vance. He had thought he could operate in the shadows, gathering evidence and exposing the truth. But Vance was playing a different game, a game of intimidation and violence. He was using Ben as leverage, a way to force Bishop to back down. Bishop knew he couldn't back down. Not now. Not ever. He had come too far, sacrificed too much. He had to save Ben, clear Maya's name, and bring Vance to justice. But he knew he was walking into a trap. Vance would be expecting him, prepared for him. He needed a plan, a way to strike back at Omnicorp without putting Ben in further danger. He decided to focus on the experimental treatments that Maya had been investigating. He believed that the key to exposing Vance's crimes lay in the truth about those deaths. He returned to the clinic, determined to find the patient records that Maya had been searching for. He knew it was a risky move, that Omnicorp would be watching the clinic closely. But he had no other choice. He infiltrated the clinic again, using the same methods he had used before. He disabled the security cameras and bypassed the alarm system. He made his way to the records room, a small, windowless space filled with shelves of patient files. He began searching through the files, looking for anything related to the experimental treatments. He found a series of reports detailing the patient's conditions, their treatments, and their eventual deaths. The reports were heavily redacted, but Bishop noticed a pattern. All of the patients had received a new drug developed by Omnicorp, a drug designed to treat a rare genetic disorder. He suspected that the drug was the cause of the deaths, that it had unforeseen side effects that had been covered up by Omnicorp. He needed to find the original research data, the raw clinical trial results. He knew that information would be stored electronically on the clinic servers. He returned to the server room, determined to access the data as he was downloading the files. He heard a noise behind him. He turned to see Kruger standing in the doorway, a gun in his hand. "I've been waiting for you, Bishop," Kruger said, his voice a low growl. "Vance wants you alive, that he wants to make an example of you." Bishop knew he was in trouble. Kruger was a formidable opponent, a highly skilled fighter. But he wasn't going to surrender. He was going to fight back, to protect the truth, and to save Ben. The stakes had been raised. The fight with Kruger was brutal and efficient. Bishop, despite being caught off guard, managed to disarm Kruger and subdue him with a series of calculated strikes. He left Kruger unconscious on the floor, knowing he wouldn't be down for long. He had to get out of there. And he needed a new plan. He couldn't rely on Ben anymore. Ben was compromised, a liability. He needed someone else, someone who could help him navigate the complex digital landscape of Omnicorp, someone who could exploit their vulnerabilities. He remembered a name Ben had mentioned once, a legendary hacker known only as Zero. Zero was a ghost, a myth, a figure whispered about in the dark corners of the internet, and no one knew his real identity, his location, or his motivations. But everyone knew he was a master of his craft, capable of breaching even the most secure systems. Finding Zero was like searching for a needle in a haystack. But Bishop was resourceful. He used his old contacts in the intelligence community to track down rumors, follow leads, and piece together fragments of information. He eventually learned that Zero frequented a particular online forum, a haven for hackers and cyber activists. He created a fake profile and started participating in the forum, hoping to catch Zero's attention. He posted a series of cryptic messages, hinting at his knowledge of Omnicorp's unethical practices and his determination to expose them. He knew Zero would be watching, that he would be intrigued by his words. After several days of waiting, he received a private message from an anonymous user. "I know who you are, Bishop, and I know what you're after." It was Zero. They exchanged a series of encrypted messages, testing each other, probing each other's motives. Bishop explained his situation, his wife's death, Maya's framing, Ben's kidnapping. He laid bare his soul, revealing his vulnerability. His desperation. Zero was silent for a long time. Then, he responded, "I'll help you, Bishop. But you need to understand the risks. Omnicorp is a powerful enemy. They will stop at nothing to protect their secrets." "I know," Bishop replied, "but I'm not afraid." Zero provided Bishop with a secure communication channel and a set of tools to analyze the data he had downloaded from the clinic servers. He explained the intricacies of Omnicorp's network, their security protocols, their vulnerabilities. He revealed that Omnicorp used a proprietary encryption algorithm that was virtually unbreakable. But he also discovered a backdoor, a hidden vulnerability that could be exploited with the right code. Zero agreed to write the code, but he needed Bishop to provide him with specific information about Omnicorp's internal systems. He needed access to their servers, their databases, their communication networks. Bishop knew this was a dangerous request. It would require him to infiltrate Omnicorp headquarters, a fortress of security and surveillance. But he had no other choice. He had to trust Zero, to believe that he could help him bring Vance down. He began planning his infiltration, studying the blueprints of Omnicorp headquarters, analyzing their security protocols, identifying potential weaknesses. He knew he was walking into a suicide mission, but he was prepared to die for the truth, for justice, for Maya, and for Ben. The final battle was about to begin. Omnicorp headquarters was a fortress, a gleaming monolith of steel and glass that rose above the Chicago skyline. IT was protected by layers of security, from armed guards and biometric scanners to motion sensors and advanced surveillance systems. Infiltrating it would be a suicide mission, but Bishop had no other choice. He spent days studying the building's blueprints, identifying potential weaknesses, and planning his route. He learned that the building's power grid was controlled by a separate facility located a few blocks away. This facility was less heavily guarded, and it offered a potential point of entry. He decided to target the power grid, hoping to create a diversion that would allow him to slip into the main headquarters undetected. He dressed in a maintenance worker's uniform, complete with a hard hat and a tool belt, hoping to blend in with the staff. He approached the power grid facility under the cover of darkness, his senses on high alert. He disabled the security cameras with a small EMP device and scaled the perimeter fence. He slipped inside, moving like a shadow through the dimly lit corridors. He located the main control room, a large, windowless space filled with computers and electrical equipment. He disabled the alarm system and began hacking into the system, using the tools and knowledge that Zero had provided him. He uploaded a virus that would cause a temporary power outage at Omnicorp headquarters, creating the diversion he needed. As the lights flickered and died, he slipped out of the power grid facility and headed towards the main building. Chaos erupted at Omnicorp headquarters as the power went out. Alarms blared, security systems malfunctioned, and employees scrambled in confusion. Bishop used the chaos to his advantage, blending in with the crowds and making his way towards the server room. The server room was located deep within the building, protected by multiple layers of security. He bypassed the biometric scanners using a fake ID that Zero had created. He disabled the motion sensors with a specialized device. He navigated the maze of corridors, avoiding the security guards who were frantically trying to restore order. He finally reached the server room, a large, heavily fortified space filled with rows of humming servers. He knew this was it, the heart of Omnicorp's digital empire. He had to get inside, access the data, and download the information that Zero needed. He used a specialized hacking tool to bypass the final layer of security, a complex firewall that protected the servers. He slipped inside, his heart pounding in his chest. He connected his laptop to the main server and began downloading the data that he needed to access the research data on the experimental drug. The information Maya had been investigating. As he was downloading the data, he heard a noise behind him. He turned to see a group of security guards rushing towards him, guns drawn. They had discovered his presence. A firefight erupted. Bishop ducked behind a server rack, returning fire with his Glock. The security guards returned fire, bullets ricocheting off the metal surfaces. Bishop was outnumbered, outgunned. He knew he couldn't stay there and fight. He had to escape, to protect the data he had downloaded. He threw a smoke grenade, creating a cloud of confusion. He used the cover of the smoke to slip out of the server room, making his way towards the emergency exit. He fought his way through the corridors, taking down security guards with a series of brutal hand-to-hand combat moves. He dodged bullets, leaped over obstacles, and smashed through windows. He finally reached the emergency exit, a steel door that led to the outside. He burst through the door and into the night, leaving a trail of chaos and destruction in his wake. He had survived the infiltration, but he knew Omnicorp would be coming after him. The game was far from over. Bishop managed to evade Omnicorp's pursuit, reaching a safe house that Zero had provided. He immediately uploaded the data to Zero, who began analyzing it. The news wasn't good. The data is heavily encrypted, Zero reported. It's going to take time to break it. And I've detected a tracking program embedded in the files. They know you have it. Bishop cursed under his breath. He knew Omnicorp wouldn't let him get away with it so easily. They were closing in, tightening the noose. He received a call from an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered it. "Hello, Bishop." A familiar voice said that it was Ben. "Ben, are you all right?" Bishop asked, relief washing over him. "I'm fine, John. But you need to listen to me. Vance knows everything that he knows about Zero, that he knows about the safe house, that he's coming for you." "How do you know this?" Bishop asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. He told me, John. He made me a deal. My life for yours. Bishop's heart sank that he realized the truth, the devastating betrayal. Ben had been working for Vance all along. He had been a mole, feeding Vance information about Bishop's plans. I'm sorry, John, Ben said, his voice filled with remorse. I didn't want to do this. But he threatened my family. Before Bishop could respond, the line went dead. He heard the sound of gunfire in the background, followed by a sickening thud. Ben was dead. Bishop's world crashed down around him. He had trusted Ben, relied on him, considered him a friend. Now he was gone. A victim of Vance's ruthless ambition, he felt a surge of rage, a burning desire for revenge. He wouldn't let Ben's death be in vain. He would make Vance pay, not just for Ben's death, but for everything he had done. He knew he had to move fast. Omnicorp would be arriving at the safe house any minute. He gathered his weapons and prepared for a final stand. As he was preparing, he received another message from Zero. I've broken the encryption, Bishop. I found the evidence you need. The drug caused severe birth defects. Vance covered it up, silencing the doctors and burying the evidence. Zero sent him the files, the irrefutable proof of Vance's crimes. It was enough to bring Omnicorp down, to expose Vance to the world. But it was too late for Ben. The sound of sirens filled the air. Omnicorp's forces had arrived. They stormed the safe house, unleashing a barrage of gunfire. Bishop fought back with ferocity, taking down several of his attackers. But he was outnumbered, outgunned. He knew he couldn't win. He made a decision. He uploaded the files to a secure server, ensuring that they would be released to the public even if he died. He then activated a self-destruct sequence on his laptop, destroying any trace of his presence. He stepped out of the safe house. Facing his attackers, he knew he was going to die. But he wouldn't go down without a fight. He would take as many of them with him as he could. He charged towards the enemy, firing his Glock, his face a mask of fury. The bullets ripped through his body, but he kept fighting. Fueled by rage and grief, he finally collapsed to the ground, his body riddled with bullets. He looked up at the sky, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and defiance. He was dead. But his fight was far from over. The truth had been unleashed. News of Bishop's death spread like wildfire, fueled by Omnicorp's carefully crafted narrative. They portrayed him as a dangerous terrorist, a rogue operative who had threatened their business and endangered innocent lives. The media, largely controlled by Omnicorp's influence, amplified this message, turning Bishop into a villain. But Zero knew the truth. He had received the files that Bishop had uploaded, the irrefutable proof of Vance's crimes. He knew that Bishop had sacrificed himself to expose the truth. He released the files to the public, triggering a media firestorm. The initial reports focused on the experimental drug and the birth defects it had caused, revealing Vance's cover-up and the suffering he had inflicted on countless families. But as Zero delved deeper into the data, he uncovered something far more sinister, a global conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power. He discovered that the experimental drug was just the tip of the iceberg, a small piece of a much larger puzzle. He found evidence that Omnicorp was using its technology to manipulate global markets, influence elections, and control the flow of information. They were building a digital empire, a shadow government that controlled the world from behind the scenes. He discovered that Vance's ultimate goal was to create a global surveillance state, where every citizen was tracked, monitored, and controlled. He planned to use Omnicorp's technology to identify and eliminate any potential threats to his power, creating a world where dissent was impossible. He found evidence that Omnicorp had been funding extremist groups, orchestrating terrorist attacks, and destabilizing governments in order to create chaos and fear. They were using these events to justify their expansion of surveillance and control, convincing the public that they needed Omnicorp's protection. Zero realized that Bishop's fight was not just about his wife's death or Maya's framing. It was about saving the world from Vance's tyranny. He knew he had to expose the full extent of Omnicorp's plan, to reveal the global conspiracy to the world. But he was just one man, facing a powerful and ruthless enemy. He reached out to a network of journalists, activists, and hackers who had been fighting against corporate corruption and government overreach. He shared the evidence he had gathered, hoping to convince them to join his fight. Many were skeptical, fearing retribution from Omnicorp, but some believed him, recognizing the truth in his words. They agreed to help him, to use their skills and resources to expose Vance's crimes to the world. They launched a coordinated campaign, releasing the evidence to the public through anonymous channels, bypassing Omnicorp's control of the media. They organized protests, demanding accountability from governments and corporations. They used social media to spread the word, bypassing censorship and reaching millions of people around the world. The truth began to spread, igniting a global movement against Omnicorp. People from all walks of life rose up, demanding freedom, justice, and transparency. They refused to be controlled by Vance's digital empire. The world was on the brink of chaos, on the verge of revolution. That Vance's carefully constructed empire was crumbling, threatened by the power of the truth. He knew he had to act fast, to silence the dissent and restore order. But he was running out of time. The final battle was about to begin. Although Bishop is dead, his actions inspired Maya to continue his fight. Having been released from prison thanks to the leaked evidence, she knew what she had to do. She was no special forces operative, but she possessed a different kind of strength, a moral conviction that burned brighter than any weapon. She knew Bishop would want her to finish what he started. With Zero's help, Maya began planning her own assault on Omnicorp. Headquarters Point Zero provided her with the same blueprints, the same security protocols, the same vulnerabilities that Bishop had used. He also provided her with a team of skilled hackers and activists, people who were willing to risk their lives to bring Vance down. Their plan was audacious. A full-scale assault on Omnicorp headquarters designed to cripple their systems, expose their crimes, and bring Vance to justice. They knew it was a suicide mission, but they were prepared to die for the cause. Under the cover of darkness, Maya and her team approached Omnicorp headquarters. They bypassed the perimeter security using a combination of hacking and social engineering. They disabled the surveillance cameras, bypassed the biometric scanners, and infiltrated the building undetected. They split into teams, each with a specific objective. One team targeted the server room, aiming to destroy Omnicorp's data and cripple their systems. Another team targeted the security control room, aiming to disable the building's defenses. Maya, along with a small team of bodyguards, headed straight for Vance's office, determined to confront him and bring him to justice. As they made their way through the building, they encountered resistance from Omnicorp's security forces. Gunfights erupted, explosions rocked the building, and chaos reigned. Maya and her team fought with ferocity, using their skills and training to overcome the enemy. They faced off against waves of security personnel, armed with advanced weapons and protected by body armor. They dodged bullets, leaped over obstacles, and smashed through windows. They used their knowledge of the building's layout to their advantage, setting traps and ambushes for their pursuers. They encountered advanced technology, from automated turrets and laser grids to robotic drones and enhanced security systems. They used their hacking skills to disable these systems, turning Omnicorp's own technology against them. One by one, Maya's team members fell, sacrificing themselves to protect her and ensure the success of the mission. She felt a pang of guilt with each loss, but she knew she couldn't stop. She had to keep going, to honor their sacrifice and finish what they had started. She finally reached Vance's office, a luxurious penthouse suite located on the top floor of the building. She burst through the door, her gun drawn, her face a mask of determination. Vance was waiting for her, sitting behind his desk, a calm and collected expression on his face. He was surrounded by bodyguards, armed and ready to defend him. "I knew you would come, Maya," Vance said, his voice calm and measured. "I admired your uncle's determination. But you're making a mistake. You can't win." "This isn't about winning, Vance," Maya replied, her voice filled with conviction. "It's about justice. It's about holding you accountable for your crimes." "Justice is a myth, Maya," Vance said, his eyes cold and calculating. "Power is the only thing that matters. And I have all the power." A tense standoff ensued, the fate of the world hanging in the balance. The final confrontation was about to begin. The standoff in Vance's office was broken by the sharp crack of gunfire. Maya and her bodyguards exchanged fire with Vance's security team, the room erupting in a chaotic ballet of bullets and explosions. Despite being outnumbered, Maya and her team fought with skill and determination. They used cover and concealment to their advantage, picking off Vance's bodyguards one by one. As the last bodyguard fell, Vance rose from his chair, a look of cold fury on his face. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a handgun, aiming it at Maya. "You're a fool, Maya," Vance said, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you can stop me? You think you can change the world? You're wrong. I am the future, and the future belongs to me." Before Vance could fire, Maya lunged forward, disarming him with a swift kick to the wrist. The gun flew across the room, landing harmlessly on the floor. Vance, no longer armed, charged at Maya, his eyes filled with rage. He was a powerful man, physically imposing, but Maya was faster, more agile. She dodged his attack and retaliated with a series of rapid punches and kicks. Vance stumbled backward, dazed and disoriented. Maya seized the opportunity, delivering a final, devastating blow to his jaw. Vance collapsed to the ground, unconscious. With Vance subdued, Maya turned her attention to his computer. She knew that the key to dismantling Omnicorp's power base lay in exposing their crimes to the world. She connected her laptop to Vance's computer and began downloading the data. She uploaded the files to a secure server, ensuring that they would be released to the public, regardless of what happened to her. As the data was downloading, Zero contacted her. "Maya, I've gained access to Omnicorp's global communication network. I can broadcast your message to the entire world." "Do it, Zero," Maya replied, her voice filled with determination. "Let the world know the truth about Adrian Vance and Omnicorp." Zero broadcasted Maya's message to every television screen, every computer monitor, every smartphone on the planet. He revealed Vance's crimes, his manipulation of markets, his influence on elections, his plans for a global surveillance state. The world watched in stunned silence as the truth was revealed. People from all walks of life, from every corner of the globe, saw Vance for what he truly was: a ruthless tyrant, a power-hungry megalomaniac who had betrayed their trust and threatened their freedom. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Protests erupted in cities around the world, demanding Vance's arrest and the dismantling of Omnicorp. Governments launched investigations, seizing Omnicorp's assets and freezing their accounts. Corporations severed ties with the company, fearing public backlash. Vance's carefully constructed empire crumbled before his eyes. His power base was destroyed, his reputation ruined, his future uncertain. As the police arrived to arrest Vance, Maya looked down at his unconscious form, a mixture of pity and contempt in her eyes. She knew that his reign of terror was over, that his crimes had finally caught up with him. She had avenged her uncle's death, cleared her name, and saved the world from Vance's tyranny. She had finished what Bishop had started, and she had done it with courage, determination, and an unwavering commitment to justice. The fight was over. In the aftermath of Vance's arrest, the world began to heal. Governments around the globe launched investigations into Omnicorp's activities, uncovering a web of corruption and deceit that stretched to the highest levels of power. Many of Vance's co-conspirators were arrested and brought to justice, their careers ruined, their reputations shattered. Omnicorp was dismantled, its assets seized, its technology repurposed for the public good. The world's citizens, awakened to the dangers of unchecked corporate power and government surveillance, demanded greater transparency and accountability from their leaders. New laws were enacted to protect privacy, limit corporate influence, and promote freedom of information. Maya, hailed as a hero by millions, dedicated her life to fighting for justice and equality. She established a foundation to support victims of corporate abuse and to promote ethical technology. She never forgot her uncle, John Bishop, or his sacrifice. She knew that his courage and determination had inspired her to fight for what was right, even in the face of overwhelming odds. 1 year after Vance's arrest, Maya returned to Alaska, to the small, isolated cabin where Bishop had sought refuge. She stood outside the cabin, looking out at the vast, snow-covered landscape. She felt a sense of peace, a sense of closure. She knew that Bishop's spirit lived on, in her heart, in the hearts of everyone who had been touched by his story. As she was about to leave, she noticed something lying on the doorstep of the cabin. It was a small, encrypted USB drive. Curious, she picked it up and connected it to her laptop. The drive contained a single file, a message from Zero. "Maya," the message read, "Vance was just a puppet. There are others, even more powerful, who are pulling the strings. They are watching you. They know what you have done. Be careful. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She realized that the fight was not over, that the forces of darkness were still out there, lurking in the shadows. She knew she couldn't back down. She had come too far, sacrificed too much. She had to continue the fight, to protect the world from those who would seek to control it. She looked out at the Alaskan wilderness, her eyes filled with determination. She knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but she was ready. She had the courage, the skills, and the support of millions of people around the world as she turned to leave. She noticed a figure standing in the distance. Watching her, it was a man, dressed in black. His face obscured by shadows, he raised his hand in a silent salute, then disappeared into the trees. Maya knew that she was not alone. She had allies, protectors, guardians who would stand by her side in the fight against evil. She smiled, a knowing smile. The game was far from over. The fight for freedom and justice would continue as long as there were those who were willing to stand up and fight for what was right. The end. For now.